All right. I am so excited to introduce you to our guest today, Chris DeSantis. He is a coach, an athlete, father, and the host of the Swim Brief podcast. In 2009, Chris became the first athletic coach to earn an advanced degree in positive psychology from UPenn's world-renowned Masters in Applied Positive Psychology program. For the past 15 years, he has been putting that knowledge into practice, helping athletes, coaches, and teams develop the psychological tools that they need to perform at their best. At a time when mental health has become and is becoming a bigger and more necessary part of the sports conversation, Chris brings a refreshing perspective and pretty disruptive one too, which I admire. At his core, he is a coach who is passionate about helping everyone involved in sports communicate in positive, proactive ways about thoughts, feelings, and performance. His unique approach is turning mental health from something people fear or avoid into an opportunity for growth. Chris believes swimming is the best sport in the world because of the brilliant, determined, and creative people it attracts. And one of the most powerful lessons he's learned from them is this: fear is the easiest way to motivate yourself. Fear can always get you to take the next step. Hope is what allows you to expand how far you can go. This is a powerful conversation, not just for those swim parents and swimmers out there, but for all of us. Because one thing that Chris does for sure is he leads with vulnerability. He leads with authenticity. He's open. And in this conversation, I found myself like just completely engaged, completely present, and also learning as I do in these conversations and learning new way of looking at things. And I'm excited to share this one with you. It's been a long time coming. So without further ado, let's do this. All right, Chris, tables are turned, and now it's your turn to be on my podcast. I'm so grateful that you're here. Welcome.
I'm so excited. You and I communicated about this, and as maybe your listeners are going to find out if they tune into my podcast later, I've been doing a podcast for a long time. I think I've done between 400 and 500 episodes. I think it's less than 5 times I've been a guest on a podcast. Way. So I'm so excited. Yeah, it's not very many times that I've been on the other side of this, and I'm dying for opportunities. I'm so excited today to do this.
Oh my gosh, I'm pumped. And also just pausing there to say, like, as I'm finding my way, I don't even know if you know how impactful like your kindness and just like being like reminding me to be kind to myself because I'm new at it. Because I like to be great when I start things, right?
Yes.
And so that learning curve for me. You've also like, you listen, you plug into podcasts, and then as somebody that's been on your show, the experience as a guest, it's the same iceberg. Like you see what's on the surface, but the body of work underneath to produce 400 or more is, I bow to that. Yes. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. We have that in common, by the way. And I know that about you, that you want to be great at something immediately.
Right away.
I think that's why I'm talking to you that way, because I really wish somebody had said to me when I was starting, like, hey, Chris, it's okay. You're just getting started. Like, know, this is a skill. It's going to take a long time to acquire. And I'm definitely still working on it, but it feels a lot more automatic and, like not such a monumental chore to get one out anymore. Yeah. But let's not get too deep talking about podcasts. I know you want to like
totally. Let's jump into your childhood and upbringing. So we kick off that way with, and I know, right? Unpack it all. No, we're not doing that.
Yes.
But in the ways that it shaped, I mean, it's a really important piece of how we see the world, how we see ourselves, right? So what when you look back at your cultural upbringing and background, how do you see that as shaping who you've become and how you see the world?
Yeah, what a question. And what an interesting way to start. I grew up like you in the sport of swimming, like you up in Massachusetts. I think one of the things I say to people all the time is probably last on my parents' list for aspirations for me was that I was going to become an athlete or that I was going to be interested in sports at all, which is, of course, why I went all the way in on it. Like that was my active childhood rebellion, was becoming a jock. Because my parents definitely wanted to, like on their priority list, it was like, let's have an artist, let's have a musician, and maybe third, just like the biggest nerd, who gets an A in every class. And like 50th on the list was like, okay, maybe he could play sports too.
Oh my goodness. That's so funny.
I went all the way in on it. I started swimming when I was 9 years old. I was not the type of kid who was good at sports like when I got started. In fact, my core memory of getting started in swimming, and I think something that keeps a lot of humility in the work that I do now, was I think I got dead last, like in every swim meet that I went to for the first year. And this is actually a seminal story. You talk about childhood and parents, and I know there's a lot of parents that listen to this. I tell this story about my mom at the end of my first year of swimming all the time, and I'll cry every single time that I tell it, because I got to the end of that year, and like with like a lot of other sports, I wanted to quit because you know, I went to these meets, I got last. I didn't feel good about that. I didn't like getting beaten mercilessly by all the other kids. And I went to my mom and I said, Mom, I want to hang it up in swimming. Like it's too embarrassing. I'm the worst kid on the team. Like, can I just stop? And I'll never forget what my mom did in that moment. Now, this is like 1993, right? No internet, no other way of tracking things. She had come to all of my meets, and she had a little book, and the book had different events in it, and she would just mark down my time in the book. So I'd do the 50 free, and, you know, she'd write down, I think I was over a minute, you know, as a starter in the 50 free, right? But just every meet, she would just mark it down. She said, you can do whatever you want, right? If you can quit if you want, but I'm going to ask one thing of you. I want you to open this book. I want you to look at this. This is part where I always crack up. I want you to look at where you started.
Yeah.
And see where you are now. And if after you do that, you still want to quit, you can quit. And I opened that book and I saw, am I still slow in relation to my peers? Absolutely. But I saw all the progress that I had made. And really, if I reflect back into my 9-year-old self, like I was proud of myself. I was proud in that moment in a way that I wasn't 5 minutes before, right? And that got me to keep going. And I think about that all the time because my career is in and around swimming and the sport of swimming. I almost quit. I almost quit after 1 year because what? Because I was embarrassed about how I was in relation to other people. And so I continued on. I think swimming really caught fire to me when I was probably about 14 years old. That's actually when I got good in relation to my peers. I was kind of peaked. My athletic career it was wild. I was bad to start, and then I peaked at age 14. Everything else was downhill for that. But you know, that really hooked me in because I think I saw that there was a cause and effect in sports, that you really did get something when you put something into it. I saw the development in myself. And the other thing that happened to me when I was 14 was that was when I decided I wanted to become a coach, because that year I switched teams. And honestly, I had never really connected with a coach. I'd been doing the sport. I'd been showing up to the practices. I had been, you know, swimming the laps back and forth, but I had never truly liked my coach. And I loved my coach when I was 14. I mean, he was incredible. We just had this incredible year. And I remember instantly, it just clicked for me. I said, this is amazing. And this is what I want to do, right? Like when I grow up, I want to be the type of person who, you know, can change literally. I mean, really, he changed the trajectory of my life at age 14. It pulled me out of, to that point, the deepest, darkest sort of mental health hole. Being in 7th grade and 13 years old was not a good year for Chris DeSantis. I've had a lot of peaks and valleys with my mental health over the years. That was probably the first valley. And so he played a large part in pulling me out of that. I swam all the way through college. And I guess if we're going to finish the childhood section, we're going to make our way back to another valley that informs what I do now, because now I'm out through Chris DeSantis coaching, I do a lot of education around positive psychology, work individually with athletes, coach coaches, coach teams. And my number one why is the experience that I had finishing competing in college, which is, I swam in my last meet. It was 400 freestyle relay, college swim meets usually end with that, right? And keep in mind in this story, I'm 42 years old right now. I still compete in the sport of swimming.
We've got to get there. We'll get there. Yeah.
I'm swimming in a meet in 3 days. So
so fun.
I am passionate about the sport of swimming. I love swimming. When I finished swimming in college, I remember what I was thinking about in the showers afterwards, which was, thank God I'd never have to do that again. So I've been on a journey where I've been at all levels. I've been all the way in, and I've been so disgusted with how it was going that I could not wait to get away from it. And the reason why I do the work I do now is because I really wish a lot of the stuff that I do, that I had access to that when I was an athlete, that somebody had been able to help me, and that I had not, gotten to that point while I was in the prime of my life, with the best opportunity to do all these things.
Well, if you say prime athletically, maybe, although no, I don't even know. We could challenge that not. Too. Yeah. So that begs the question, what shifted? So kind of what contributed to that, can't wait to be done space, and then what pulled you back? So it's kind of two parts. When you look back on the experience as an athlete, was it, were you being pulled by the next phase or kind of pushed out by swim?
Well, so one factor for sure, and I think I've matured on this, so I'm going to see if I can phrase it in the right way, because at various other points in my life, I think I would express what I'm about to express really immaturely, to be honest.
With a charge.
I did, I did not get along well with my college coach. I really did not. I really did not. We didn't speak to each other for beyond hey, you're doing the 100 breast in this, dual meet. Here's your assignments for the day. We had no hello, goodbye, anything for the last 2 months of swimming in college. And having a bad relationship with your coach, right? Having a good relationship with your coach can be life-changing. Having a bad relationship with your coach can be life-changing. And if I own up to my part of it, a mistake that I have made many, many times, and I've only recently gotten somewhat better at not replicating it, is, and I didn't tell you this part of the story as well, but this goes back to my childhood. People are surprised to hear this all the time because, if you meet me in person, you're listening to me on a podcast right now. I'm 6'1", 205 pounds. I'm fairly muscular. I was a big little kid. I was very much bigger than my peers. I was bullied all the way through school. And simply the reason for that was because I was a good victim for somebody to bully. I didn't fight back. And I took it really hard. So I was perfect, right? And in a lot of different situations in my life, and I think swimming in college was one of them, I had no boundaries, right? So I just really let my college coach run roughshod over me. I let so much stuff slide until I couldn't take it anymore, right? And then it exploded. Totally. Into this moment that we couldn't recover from in a relationship. And so if I had to do it all over again, I think I would have, what I try to do now is set those boundaries a lot closer, and a lot more frequently, and not let things accumulate to that regard where you're in this dramatic moment where everything's kind of broken.
Yeah. Can we hang here for a sec and bring it to pull on your expertise now?
Yeah.
So in this current, even young kids, I was sharing before, a friend of mine who has her daughter's playing club softball. And it's, she's journeying through for the first time, right? Experiencing this. So from that, for those parents where their kids are still little and on these teams that are rostered, there's spots, there's these, all the way through to the, let's go Power 4 roster caps. What would you say to an athlete or even a parent, like in setting boundaries? I think there's a fear around that because this like power hold of I'm in charge of these spots now. So could you speak into that, taking yourself back to that time of what that might look like or sound like given the current landscape? Or does it change anything? Yeah. So I'm so curious how you approach this. It feels like a really like current day.
Yeah. I mean, I coach people through this all the time, right? A lot of my one-on-one coaching, it's really interesting. Maybe we can talk about this later, but I think what we're really talking about here more than anything that I don't think athletes get taught in the system is they don't get taught how to be coached, right? And so, whatever is happening on their team, it just seems like, okay, well, this is normal, right?
Yeah.
And I just have to go with the flow of whatever this is. And I spend a lot of time, particularly with teenage athletes, trying to help them build up, you don't have to just base everything off of what this adult is telling you, right? You can have some of your own expectations for yourself. You can have some of your own standards. It's not incoherent with being a good athlete, being a good person on a team.
Powerful, Chris.
Right?
Yeah.
You, in fact, for me, I wish I'd had that developmental step as well, because a lot of the time in that situation, I was waiting for my college coach to, put his arm around me and go, "Hey, Chris, I'm so proud of you. You're doing such a good job." It was never coming, Sam.
Yeah.
It was never coming, and it devastated me.
Yeah.
And so what I try to do is I try to help a lot of athletes to get to the point where they can put their own arm around their own shoulder figuratively and say like, "Hey, you did a good job. You did the right thing." And more specifically to your question, how do you deal with a lot of these situations where, maybe you're afraid of the coach? I think you have to figure out, again, what is your own standard for what you think is right? And there's great power in just being able to state that calmly and assertively, but not in a way where you wait like I did and it gets imbued with all this extra baggage, right? You can do it very proactively, and it's worth knowing, right, how people are going to respond on the other end. I run into the situation with people that are getting recruited. Probably the most frequent person who seeks me out, right, is a junior in high school who's freaking out about recruiting.
Well, it's intense. That's real.
Yeah.
And I really encourage, so people listening, find Chris, find a Chris, find somebody for their kid, because that is we don't know what we don't know. And so I just I want people to explore you as a resource. Yes. So
Me too.
I'll let you talk now. Yeah. Go ahead.
Me too. No, I mean, but
junior high school recruiting, trying to navigate this. Yeah.
And it's like there's so much anxiety that comes out of I don't know where I stand, with this, and I'm scared to ask, essentially.
Yeah.
And I'm like, get in there and ask them, are they recruiting you? What are they willing to do in terms of supporting you? It cannot hurt. It literally cannot hurt. In fact, it can really help you, because on the other end, there's a person who's completely overwhelmed. They're dealing with too big of a volume. I have a lot of empathy for coaches on the other end as well, because those are my people. I mean, those are me, right? Make it easy for them by just being direct and asking for what you want, and moving that conversation forward. And by the way, I wish that on the flip side, right, you can imagine, people imagine all sorts of horrible things that maybe potentially are going to happen if they stand up for themselves. Wouldn't you like to know?
Totally.
Right? I coached a guy who at Georgia Tech, who was actually from Ohio. Now, I know you work at Ohio State right now. This is not the current Ohio State administration that we're talking about. This is a previous coach, right? Yeah. But he had chosen to go to Georgia Tech over Ohio State, and he got a really bad response. He got a really angry personal response from the then coach of Ohio State. And I said, "Oh, God, that must have been really hard for you." He goes, "Yeah, but you know what? I'm really glad I found out. I wouldn't have wanted to swim for that guy." if that's how he reacted in that situation. Right. And I'm like, yeah, it would actually be very useful for everybody just to hear what somebody sounds like when you tell them no.
Yeah.
On the other end, because those are very revealing conversations about sort of the emotional maturity of whoever is coaching you or is going to coach you in the future.
So it's so true. And that turning towards, so that's already popping as a theme for like in your own story too, of going back. It's like being able to, if you had the skills that you have now, being able to turn toward that coach to you and express, like, use your voice. And what I was bringing to you is this resistance, right? This resistance, the fear around actually doing that, because what will happen? What will they think of me? And so I love where you're landing this, like, okay, so then you know, and what don't you want to know? Yeah, it's so true. So I'm like, yeah, we're already right, like inside of the gold and the wisdom that you're offering to others. So let's zoom back or zoom out and come back a bit to your experience as an athlete. What was the piece that pulled you back to swim? Because now you literally, I mean, you're competing. I love it. I felt like, see your pictures on social. I'm like, I'm not there yet. I did come back to the pool after 10 years of not touching the water, at least chlorinated water. But yeah, what was the shift for you in moving back to the sport of swim?
Well, sometimes I think I'm blessed. I mean, I don't want to guess why you're not swimming, but I would just say you competed at such a high level. And in my experience, a lot of the people that I know that made it to like international level competition, it seems harder for them to come back to the sport, because there's something to get past in terms of, like, obviously you have this experience of being so fast. And you're not that anymore,
no,
right?
Not
when
anymore.
You show up to the pool, it's like you really have to park your ego, right?
Totally. In the joy that comes from chasing that and to know that level, it's like, oh, if I go run now, and like that's where I turned my energy. I was going to just start to run, because why not? Like, go do. But it was okay to be a rookie there. So probably a little bit of imposter, as I say this out loud, of like getting back into the pool, and is it okay to be where I am now compared? But my mind just like constantly, yes. So what about for you? What was the piece
that is definitely a part of it. Where, like, I talk about this actually when I'm out speaking to athletic audiences, because I take my training pretty seriously, but like I will never train like I did when I was 20, 21. I was, in comparison, I was such a workhorse at that time, right? Just the volume and the sheer kind of abuse I could put my body through.
It's real.
And I miss it. I do. It does. Like, I had to mourn it a little bit. Like, I just can't do that. And there's always going to be a part of me that wants to. How did I come back? Actually, I started swimming just a couple of years after college. I started swimming again. Once I became a coach. And part of it for me is, and I say this with no judgment to any coaches who, don't continue to compete. I'm not like saying you're bad for doing it. Just for me, I learn a lot for my coaching by continuing to train and compete. I have a pretty severe ADHD, so the blessing of that is that I'm very in the moment almost all the time. And so literally having been in the water recently makes it easier for me to connect with people that are still doing that, because I have that experience kind of fresh in my mind. So first off, like I see it as something that is an engine for improving my own coaching, and that gives me motivation to do it. That's been one part of it. A second part of it, I would say, is, and people will hear throughout this is not fake. This is not like a toxic positivity. I really do try very hard to find silver linings in things. And so part of continuing to compete has been finding a silver lining in aging. I think and in coaching, I've always really, it took me a long time to realize this, but I love kind of coach situations where you have one hand tied behind your back and you got to hop on one foot at the same time because it forces you to get creative. You have to I coached at Georgia Tech for a few years. We had the 1996 Olympic pool. We had all the resources in the world. In some ways, it wasn't as fun as later in my career when I was coaching a high school team and we practiced in an 85-degree pool and we had 1 hour, 3 days a week. Like I had to really figure out what to do when I had no resources. And in terms of my own swimming, like I tell people all the time, as you get older, like doors just shut. So you things get closed off to you, right? Like I said, I can't train the same way that I used to. I can't, as I phrased it, abuse my body the same way that I used to. And so I have to apply a little bit of ingenuity because I do still want to be fast. And by the way, I'm actually pretty close to the same speed that I was in college.
I was wondering about that. Yeah,
I'm going to toot my own horn in that regard. I've actually gone a personal best in my 40s.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm doing pretty good in that regard as well. But like I enjoy the ingenuity of, okay, like you have all these limitations now that you didn't have before. What are you going to do to try to still be fast? Like what stuff are you going to explore? What stuff, by the way, a lot of it, I would say, because when I talk to athletic populations, I go, do you guys honestly think, I won a best time in my 40s by, doing something amazing in training that I didn't do in my 20s? No, it's just 90% of BS that I cut out. That's why I was able to go faster. I just did a lot less stupid stuff than I used to.
Brought more intention.
Yeah.
I love that.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So, and there's joy in it. You can feel it when you talk about it. And the truth is, like, I'm, similar, a little bit older than you, but similar journey of, like I can't do it's not great for my body either. I'm learning to do the long runs anymore. So my new thing is heavy lifting. And I do use that too. Like the workouts to connect with athletes current day, right? That I'm walking alongside to connect to that space of when your body wants to just hit the eject button and you want out, right? And being able to play in that, like stay connected to growth really. And that growth edge, where I feel like that's where the magic happens, right? So, yeah. So, okay. So we come back to your journey and you graduate, you take a break from swim, you eventually find your way back there, but did you go right in? You knew you wanted to coach at 14. Is that the path that you took? And kind of.
Yep. Yeah. So I wanted to be, when I got done swimming in college, I wanted to be a college swim coach because I thought college swimming was really cool. I mean, despite that I didn't have a good experience myself doing it, I was a huge fan of the sport. I was known for my teammates. Like, where is Chris? He's, lying on his futon looking at swim times. That was like what people would say about me because I was
love now when there's Meet Mobile
no, it's
and
great.
All. Yeah, like your mom. We got to come back to that at some point.
I was up to date on what everything was happening. I was a Division III swimmer, but like I knew what was going on in D2, D1, international meets, all that piece, and like D1 NCAA swimming to me was like the pinnacle of something that I could be involved in. I spectacularly crashed and burned in my first attempt to do it. So I didn't, I think getting in the door, there is so much about who you know. And I was I didn't have a good relationship with my college swim coach, and I was at a D3 school in Maine, right? Colby College. And so I just didn't know anybody. And I didn't, so I didn't catch on anywhere in the first year. I went to go work at a boarding school. This is another.
Which one did you work at? I didn't know that.
The Kiski School. It's an all boys school in Salzburg, Pennsylvania. 200 boys. I needed to get out of there as soon as possible. So thank God at Thanksgiving, on Thanksgiving break, I met my wife. We started dating, and one of the things that she has always done in my life is like I'm kind of more of a cautious type. Like like you said earlier, I want to be great at something right at the beginning. I want to have, everything in place before
you leap.
A leap. And she's kind of more of the person who just like comes up behind me and just pushes me off the cliff.
Yeah.
she's done that for me several times. The first time she did that was, we were starting dating and everything, and she was like, "Is this what you're doing? Is this really what you want to do?" And I said, "No, I want to be a college coach, but I tried and it just didn't work out, and I'm just not going to be able to do it." And she was basically like, "F that, you're going to try again. You're going to try again, and you're going to try until you get it." And I flew myself out for an interview for a volunteer coaching position at the University of Pennsylvania. I remember I showed up. I think it was graduation day because there were parents coming in and interrupting every 5 or 10 minutes. I was sitting in there with the coach, and I just remember at the end he was just like, "Yeah, fine, you can do it." Very much whatever, I don't know why you care so much about this, but fine, you can come. Yeah. And I landed on coaching there. I did that for a couple of years.
Is that when you got your degree?
Yep.
Too?
Yep. So I landed there. That was very fortuitous. I was at the University of Pennsylvania, and I heard about this program. They had a master's in applied positive psychology, a very new program. They had done it for 3 years up to that point. And it was the only one of its kind in the United States. And people were like, "This would be perfect for you. You should apply to it." And I was very much again, at that time, maybe people can hear my lack of confidence. I'm a little bit more confident than I used to be. I was like, "Yeah, well, I'm not going to get in. It's an Ivy League school. They take 40 people a year."
Yeah.
I got in. I got in. I was the first person with a coaching background to get in there. I did that. And that's the basis really for almost all the work that I do now. So it was very important. I did that for the coaching there for a couple of years. It was volunteer, obviously not getting paid. It was very unsustainable.
I wish that would change in coaching.
From a cost perspective.
From a coach's
looking
wife,
back, I still don't know how
you did
right?
it.
It's I can't even, maybe we were paying our rent with my wife's student loans, which we're still paying off, by the way, like many millennials.
Right. Totally.
So that funded that. And then I went and I got a full-time job at Georgia Tech. So that was my next job. And then from Georgia Tech, the next place that, my wife pushed me off a cliff was over to Denmark.
Yeah.
And I was a club coach in Denmark for several years. My daughter was born there. We got married just a year, I guess, before we moved over there. And then I did a few years in Denmark, came back to the U.S. And started Chris DeSantis coaching. And there were a few more years coaching a team
of coaching in there. Yeah. What can we learn? This is so broad strokes, but what can we learn here from Denmark parents and how they showed up for their kids? What do you pull from that experience and the things that they did really well that we could learn from?
I mean, so I'll give American parents and kids some confidence first, because this is one of the things that I've been asked both sides of this. I was invited over to Denmark a few years ago. My ex-colleagues were like, you've had all this experience coaching in the U.S. You've been in Denmark. Please tell us, everything that's better. They asked me the reverse of your question.
Yeah.
And maybe this is me being a little bit cheeky, but I actually came over there and I was like, you guys should know what's great about your system, because if this is positive psychology in part, that we always try to take an appreciative look at things. And I think so many times we're just critique, let's do this debrief and find out everything that's wrong. We don't even know what's working in our system, right? And
that's so true.
If I flip back to the U.S. part, because this hit me like a 2x4 coaching over there. I'm a dual citizen. I have family over there. So it's not like culturally I was totally inexperienced, but I might as well have been for what I saw in the athletic environment. We take for granted in the United States how much how much we naturally just have kind of a culture around competition and competition being good.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And quite crucially, standing out from your peers being good. So I had the experience of I coached an exceptional. Then she was a girl. She's a woman now. She made 2 Olympic teams for Denmark. I coached her when she was 15, 16 years old. So just as she was moving up into the junior ranks in Danish swimming, and it was an issue for her. It was a real issue for her that there was a part of her that always felt like social shame for being better than her peers. And that was kind of foreign to me. I mean, I don't think that a lot of American kids are like, oh gosh, I'm so embarrassed that I'm good. So I think that's actually really wonderful. I know the competitiveness sometimes gets out of hand in the U.S. We probably can have a conversation about that as well. There's a lot of negatives around that. But I think it's actually wonderful in a certain way, especially for a sporting environment, that, in America, there are people that can, just stand out from the pack, and that is that gets some praise and that gets some value. In terms of what I saw in the Danish system that was better was there was a lack of hierarchy, right? And this is something that I have frequently criticized in the U.S. Sports system. Sam, from swimming circles, I've gotten myself in trouble a lot of times because I always share my honest opinion. I always speak my truth. And I've criticized a lot of people who are like way above me in this imaginary hierarchy that we have. And I find those always to be really revealing as well, because a lot of those people have kind of treated me like a bug that needs to get squashed, and I think that says more about them than me, right? I'm just saying what I think and what I think is right and what I think is wrong. In Denmark, it took me a little while to get used to it, but even my most inexperienced assistant coach, would feel very comfortable criticizing my decisions and saying hey, I don't agree with that. And he didn't perceive like, Chris is the head coach, I can't question what he's doing. And I think the athletes had a fair amount of that as well. And again, it took a little bit of adjustment for me, but I thought in the end, this is really healthy. This is to refer back to some of the stuff we've been talking about earlier. I think it prevented a lot of bad things from happening because people did, even a 10-year-old, I remember, I'm not going to use all the swear words. Danish kids swear a lot. But I remember like a 10-year-old kid came up, looked at the workout I had on the board, and he was like, this is a stupid workout. And he just walked away. And I was like, Denmark. Right. Got it.
No. Yeah. So, well, there's such this theme of clarity and transparency and being honest, right? Being able to having that permission to be able to whether it's a colleague, and the same as when it comes to parent was the same. How was that? What was that dynamic? And I guess we can shift back to the space that we're living in now, of what when you think about all of your years of experience, your experience as an athlete, your experience having a mom who showed up in that way. So I'm so curious what you're pulling forward from your experience as a child into you're also sports dad. Your kids play sports, right? Yeah. Okay. I needed to catch me up there. Right.
Not only do my kids play sports, my son just started. My son's 7, right? So he's just dipping his toes in it, but I'm his coach on his team.
Okay, you're doing the dual thing. Okay, yeah.
I'm doing the dual thing, even though I really didn't want to, but I am.
My goodness. So, what would you say in terms of where parents, was there access to coaches in a different way in Denmark because of this, the hierarchy not being there? Or was there, what was that dynamic like? What could we learn from that? Yeah.
Yeah, so for sure. I mean, one of the things that was really unusual was a lot of the pools in Denmark, they're not built, they weren't built for a university. They weren't built even with the idea that there would be spectators on it. So one of the stories I tell all the time is, I had this athlete, this exceptional athlete, and she was, at that time, she would be trying to qualify for international level junior competitions, her parents would be standing right next to me when she would be swimming. Like we would be spectating right next to each other.
Yeah.
And I think that like for a lot of American coaches, they go like, oh my God, what a nightmare, right? Like you have.
Yeah. How was that experience for you? Yeah. What was that like?
They were awesome.
there
I should have
benefits
them on
to
the podcast. They were really wonderful. I think part of this, what I learned from it is I think a lot of the issues that parents and coaches have comes from an estrangement. And I'm not blaming one side or another, but like they just don't spend time with each other. They don't get to know each other. We had no choice. Like we had to work together. We had to cooperate. We had to be cordial with each other, or else that would have been a really awful environment for everybody involved. And so, I mean, it came down to the aspect of, I know this is like a hot button issue, even at the moment, because I saw Abby Wambach, going viral.
I was going to go there if you weren't. Yeah.
With don't watch practice.
Yeah.
I can buy into a certain amount of what she was saying, but I found, and I did this a ton in Denmark, I did a lot of like specifically inviting parents to come to practice because they'd be like hearing something from their kids. They'd be like, oh, like I can't believe X and Y is happening at practice.
The distance to space. Yeah.
Right. They'd be mad about something. And I'd be like, come on down, stand right next to me. Okay. Listen to the way I'm communicating with your child. See what's actually happening. Because I have nothing to hide. Like I'm not ashamed. And I don't think I'm doing what you think I'm doing.
Yeah.
Right. And, then we can have a conversation at it. And it solved so many conflicts for me.
Chris, we're going to go there. Because first I didn't know it existed. So like that kind of interactions and right, like that experience. So thank you for bringing that context to this space so we could learn. And I think exactly of what Abby Wambach was saying. And we've got our Wolfpack books stocked in this house. We read it. I love her messages in so many ways. And this one I felt like was either clipped, maybe it was part of a longer conversation, but was not exactly why, but a huge piece of why I wanted to start this space, because this push that parents are bad and wrong. And in what you're speaking to right now of this space, when there's too much space, there's too much room for story. That is true and consistent across teammate to teammate, parent to coach, like across people, like relationships. When there's too much space and we don't know each other, it's easy to dehumanize. And how I heard her message was blind trust. And you and I both have had experiences with coaches. Like my coaches were it was abusive behavior when I was 14 years old, right? And that level of harassment, like if my parents had pupped in, they didn't because I had my older brother driving me. But that would have also been, maybe the behavior would have changed. Like, just so this idea that it's so simple to say, stay home and don't go is like, coaches they're second in line to parents with the most impactful, the most impact on a person's life. So,
right.
Yeah. So what is that space between it? It's really so interesting that American culture is such, in the vibe and the sport parenting space is like, stay away, leave the coaches alone. And I think there's reasons for that, but it went way too right. Like, yeah. So I'm gonna just drop all of that as I'm processing verbally.
Yeah. Because let me pick up on that thread, because I think too often, like what we're going for here is we go, okay, parents are giving coaches really hard time. How are we going to solve that problem? And we just look very narrowly at this very specific situation. We go, what's the solution? Okay, we'll get the parents away from practice.
Right.
But globally, everything gets weaker, right? You've solved. Now there's going to be no parents, like causing trouble for coaches at practice. But like you said, like the estrangement,
that word is powerful. Yeah.
Right? That's just going to grow. And so there's going to be, the problem's just going to go somewhere else.
And then who's caught in the middle? The kid.
The kids.
Right? Like the kid. Then the kid has to just like navigate this situation. And, do I think that I need to be sitting at my high schooler's club or her club practices or high school practices listening to? No, there's a certain age where I think we release that in terms of allowing them to do their thing and just develop a relationship with the coach themselves. And I also like you're just shining a light on something that I've never even thought about, which is like that bigger picture. Where is the time in the space for coach to communicate to parents? Like we're literally just signing our kids up and saying, okay, the expectations that we throw them to you and never have any sort of interaction. And if I want to have an interaction, then that's like, I'm an overbearing parent. And I think that then leads to coaches having to put out a ton of fires because of the situation you were describing, like what I'm hearing or the story I'm making up versus what's actually happening. Yeah. I don't even know a solution other than somewhere in the middle, right? Like there's gotta be some like developing healthy relationships in some form. But then you layer in how underpaid coaches are, period, unless you're like Power 4 football. Maybe beyond that, maybe some basketball, maybe some other coaches thrown in there, but
yeah.
So how do we, right? And how do you show up? Let's bring it to your life. Like when it comes to your own kid's journey in that interaction, I know you're coaching swimming, right? Are they doing swimming?
No, it's flag football. My son is doing flag football.
You're coaching flag football.
Oh my gosh. I'm so in over my head. It's a nightmare.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
It's 7-year-old flag football, so I'm actually on the field for the entire game, and I have to call a play, like every offensive play that we have at least. I have to call a play. I have no experience in the sport of football, so I had to like learn, and I'm trying to get 7-year-olds like to move coherently, and like it's so bad. It's so bad. But
so is this your first experience have they done sports without you coaching?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So my daughter plays soccer. She's done swimming. She hates swimming. I think she's just about done with swimming. That's her rebellion, right? I told my parents, no music for you. And my daughter's like, no swimming for you, Dad. I'm done. But she's done swimming. Kids have done a little bit of rock climbing here and there. So I would say I've been at some stuff. I don't go. The part I co-sign with Abby, I think the message she was trying to send is like, don't crush yourself as a parent feeling like you have to be at all of these things, right? Like micromanaging your kids at all those things. And I will co-sign that 100%. I mean,
same.
I feel really good. The guy who is coaching my daughter in soccer right now, he's a parent volunteer. Actually, my wife stepped up to be a coach on that team as well this year for the first year, but he coached my daughter before. We love him. I mean, and he's like such a super coach. I'm so grateful to have him on a volunteer basis. To the extent that I ever showed up to practice was actually, again, like I think my daughter had a hard time getting started, much like I did in sports. And I wanted to just see for myself, like, how is she at practice? Like what's going on at practice so that I would have my own reference when she came back and told me stories about what had happened. Like I didn't have to just, so it would be kind of like I'd watch her walk on a sprint and she'd be like, Coach yelled at me at the end of practice. And I'd be like, yeah, well, he asked you to run and you were walking.
Well, so that's the part where the space, what you've brought to my awareness that I hadn't ever thought about is that now parents upset because the coach, like if we're believing what our kids said, our kids upset, the parents upset, now they're on the coach, and there's fires burning because of this kind of downstream piece of not having an awareness. Well, there's other pieces that feed into that as well. So I'm not saying, right, like, do we go to every single practice and take notes and listen like attentively to every single thing? No, but there's got to be some in between there. How I navigate it, my older ones just consistently have shown a history of like showing up in alignment with what I would just say are our family values. My little one is the rebel in the family, and she just has her own spunk, and she's playful, and so sometimes needs to be like called on by the coach or called in. And so that is where I plant myself. I do my work, but I plant myself in the arena, so in the rink, so I can hear when she's being talked to, right? And then we can have a conversation. I don't necessarily bring it up every time, but that conversation about what matters to us, it's not about the pucks or the stick or skating. It's about how she's showing up and engaging. I'm going to be thinking about this for like the next 2 weeks, Chris. It's just this dynamic of How do we make, because right now, like it's so divisive. It's like parents are the problem, no, coaches are the problem. I'm like, well, what? Like, can we center around the athletes, the kids, the young people that we're helping to raise? And what would that look like? So speak into that if you could and paint this kind of ideal, like what would it look like?
Well, so one of the things too I do, I mean, just in the division of labor, parenting in my own household, I try to handle all the communications with coaches, and I try to handle all the communications with teachers. And the reason why I do that is I just think from my own experience being on the other side of it, I have spent a lot of time thinking about how I would like a parent to communicate with me. And what I aim for in doing all of that is I try to approach everything with my default. This is a partnership, right?
Yes.
I'm sending my kids to you. You are influencing them. We both want the same thing. We want them to thrive and have a good experience and learn something and become a better version of themselves. That's what we all want. And so maybe even in the same way, like I haven't always been innocent of this in my own marriage, like it helps in your marriage to approach everything as our problem and not your fault, my fault, right? Like I've had to learn that the hard way, even though I'm always right.
I don't know about that one.
Right. Even though I'm always right, I've had to.
Yeah. So leaning into the conversation with this, so the intention that, well, first the awareness, like, so pausing, so we're not coming in hot. We're not using, like, we're not letting emotions lead or bottling things down, right? Like when you described that earlier in your own experience till it kind of just comes pouring out. But the communication being led with the shared, like the kid, like our kids, and saying like, we're doing that, like we're in this together, and having that be the driver. So same here, right? Like that approach, it seems to be helpful in terms of building that relationship. Yeah. What would you, so from your perspective, with all the different hats that you've worn and the way that you see the world, speak and help us as parents. Like, what would we, if we want to build that relationship with the coach to kind of close the loop so we're not totally in the dark, but we're not in this overbearing space, what could we do?
So a couple things. I talk a lot about this in my general work, but a term that I use is gracious assumptions. Okay, so again, inherent in what I just said is assume. I assume that until proven like very definitively otherwise, I assume that the person on the other side also really cares about my kid, also wants the best for my kid, also is doing everything in their power to create that.
Right there alone, it's going to stop so much anger and like just that shift and that flip.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't even though you may hear things like, oh gosh, that happened at practice, like that I'm mad about that, like my kid is really upset right now, and you want, obviously, listen, you realize this from the second you become a parent, you have this instinctual, like my kid is upset right now and I'm a heat-seeking missile, I must fix it, right?
Heat-seeking missile. Oh my gosh,
right?
yes.
I must fix it, but like,
and we can learn to pause. Not easy.
You can pause, and because the second part is I always try to approach stuff with curiosity. So like I'll give you an example of a situation that was like a little bit trickier for us. My son, he's in second grade now. He finished kindergarten, and very much towards the end of the year, his kindergarten teacher scheduled a meeting with us. A meeting that I knew, she didn't really want to have from a certain extent. And we were like, oh gosh, what's this going to be? Right. And she was like, listen, it's my recommendation that he repeat kindergarten. And it's not because he's, falling behind in terms of what he's supposed to learn, just from a maturity perspective, like he's, the absolute youngest he could be in this grade. I think it would really benefit him down the line, to do this again. And like my wife and I were really upset. Parents don't want to hear
my kid's not ready, or
your kid should be held back,
left behind,
right?
Yeah.
Right. That like really bruises your ego as a parent. And, but, you know, in pausing and staying curious, we had the meeting with her, we heard her out, you know, and I just asked her, I said, like, do we have to do what you say? Or like, is this just our choice? And you're just trying to let us know what you think would be best for us to do. She was like, it's totally up to you. And I'm just trying to give you, like, you can see how that conversation could have gone. We could have gotten really defensive. We could have yelled at her, you know, like, you don't love our child. You don't care about him, et cetera, et cetera. It could have been really, really acrimonious. Now, he didn't repeat kindergarten. We just made the decision to move him on. But, you know, that teacher, she's actually like, she lives in town. Our children are friends with each other. Like, we could have destroyed what is a really nice relationship for us here, where we live, over our bruised egos. And instead it was just like, if you just stay curious, if you just assume that the person on the other side has the best intentions for your kid, you can come out of it and have a really positive outcome, which is, I think, what happened in that situation.
How do you stay, like, how do you navigate this discomfort, if you feel it, when you disagree, like in the space of disagreement? Because that's also, like you mentioned, in your work, in your world, using your voice. What are you doing internally, like resource-wise, to cope with the discomfort that comes when you disagree with someone?
First off, I mean, this is a story I told. I was just out in California, and, you know, I think this is relevant to a lot of kids because they're growing up in an environment where, you know, so much of their life is virtual and they have all these social interactions. I've been on the internet putting myself out there since 2008. So I've actually have a lot of time. Like, I was a writer before I was a podcaster, just like so many podcasters out there. Podcasts are the new writing, right? I was a writer. I was involved in media. So I've been putting myself out there for a long time. And that means that I've had a lot of people say a lot of mean things to me on the internet. And the truth of the matter is, it does not feel any better, right? I think sometimes we imagine, like, getting to a better place. Oh, I'll get to a point, my skin will be so thick, this won't bother me.
Right.
Yeah. Nope. That's not how it works. By the way, also, I used to get so nervous for swimming races. I still get nervous. I'm going to be nervous on Sunday. I get nervous every single time. The difference now is that I'm not fighting that anymore, right? I'm not fighting the uncomfortability of having people say mean things to me. And one of the things that I've done, that I've actually you talk about bringing intentionality. A lot of times when somebody has, you know, just sort of like gone off on me on the internet, I make an effort to engage with that person personally. I try to take that conversation off of, you know, like a Facebook comment, Instagram comment, this, that, or the other thing, and like talk to them on the phone and have a real life human conversation with them. And 99% of the time, I feel a lot better after that. And sometimes that conversation, it's not like we have this kumbaya moment. Oh my God, we agree about everything and we love each other.
Yeah.
But often, you know, you can take this little moment and blow it up into something way bigger than it is. And having that bigger human interaction afterwards makes you realize, like, oh, I mean, they're an all right person and they just disagreed with me about that one thing, and you can move on. So I think having a lot of practice doing that, working that
takes
muscle
so much courage. Yeah.
of engaging with people that are mad at me or don't like me or don't agree with me on one thing or another. And I would say to everybody, that's an example of that, where you get like that immediate feedback. But with a lot of this stuff, a lot of the trouble I've created for myself, for instance, in the swimming community, standing up, saying something, these are like long-term investments. Because I'll run into somebody 10 years later, right? And they're like, I'm so glad you spoke out and said that thing.
Yeah.
Right? And then I'm like, remember
Do you
I did the
remember
right thing.
when I reached out to you? Because you wrote a piece, speaking of your writing, that helped me understand. This was like after my daughter's heart surgery, and I was trying to find my way and heal and figuring out, like, because I kept coming back to like my 18-year-old self, right? Like, just kept becoming like my healing as an adult was bringing me back to these wounds that needed healing that I just kind of plowed through and left unhealed. And you had written a piece describing abusive behavior by a coach. I'd never seen those behaviors labeled with the word abuse. Like, in my mind, it was so dismissive. And I was like, what I went through, like, whatever, it was fine. It's the price I had to pay. And it was reading your words where I was like, I won't, we're trying not to swear here. And I'm like, holy, it was one of those moments where I felt it in every cell of my body, and a knowingness of like, oh, I thought that was just normal. And that opened an entire new chapter of healing for me that allowed me to go into my body and release the stored stuff that was still there that I was carrying with me, because I just thought, oh, that was just like what we had to do. Yeah. So thank you. I know I've thanked you in the past, but this is another one of those examples of that was brave to write. That coach was, applauded and upheld, and like has a long history in terms of the sport of swimming. And it wasn't even that I was coached by that coach, but the description of the behavior being categorized that way was, I would never have had that if I didn't read your words. That then allowed me to turn back toward like you coaches in USA Swimming in a room. I remember at convention turning toward for the first time and actually saying the things, like talking about something that I had shoved down so deeply. So yeah, no, so powerful. And that takes courage. So that inner resources, the resources that you have, the strength that you have to make the decision to do that and turn toward it at the risk of being judged and cast out and cut off from certain things. That is literally the definition of courage. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that. I need to hear things like that, because sometimes I get burned out on doing that. It's emotionally, it's very hard work for me. Like the one we're talking about, I think I know. Again, we don't need to get into the specifics of it here, but I think it came up recently because that coach is getting a lifetime achievement award or whatever. But in the news article putting it, my piece is linked. And when I read in the comment section, it's very interesting to see, that like public perception had changed, right? This is a person who is just kind of worshipped as like God on earth. And now there's people who are, finding, just like you, the ability to say like, hey, you know what? That's not right. That's not right. And if I can bring it back to a story from my childhood too, I said like I was bullied as a kid. I remember I'd have a pair of kids. I could walk to school. I live really close, maybe like a 10-minute walk to school. And it's Massachusetts, winters are cold. There'd be a couple boys who would come and steal my hat every day. I was walking to school. They would just steal my hat, and they'd kind of like dance around me and laugh. And, they were like having such a grand old time teasing me about my freaking hat. And I had an older brother, right? He's also like me, like a sweet person. This is very aberrant behavior for him. But I remember one time he walked with me to school, and the other kid, stole my hat, and my brother didn't hesitate for 1 second. He just reared up a punch, just punched the kid right in the nose. And the kid dropped the hat and left, and he never took my hat again. Yeah. And so I think about that story sometimes with some of these situations that, like somebody's sitting there and they just go like, I just have to take this, right? Yeah. It's normal. It's me. They're blaming themselves. I'm like, I want to be like my brother and verbally, not physically, verbally be the guy who just kind of comes up and punches that bully in the nose and lets everybody know you don't need to be scared of that person. Like they're wrong, and somebody's gonna point it out. Somebody's gonna stand up to them.
It takes someone to go first. Yeah.
Exactly.
So and in the space too, and what I hear in your, like the way that you even approach the coach today, like that are coaching your kids, is like, it's not that they're bad people, it's the behaviors that are not okay. And it was like the way that you had written about the behaviors specifically, because for me, you know, like you have this person in your life who says, I think you can be an Olympian someday, the first person who truly believes in you. And then you're like, how is that? Oh, like, how can that be paired with this behavior and you treating me this way? Like, it's so messy, especially as a kid. And so to be able to separate that and say, like, okay, like it's like here, like, I don't, like, we don't need to get down the rabbit hole. Are people inherently good inside? That's my lens. I choose to believe that people are inherently good inside and behave in ways that, you know, we're all capable of showing up below the line at times, but that can cause real harm. So yeah, so thank you for doing that. I would say, like, kind of pulling it out to parents. I knew we'd have to do a part 2 and 3 and 4, maybe 5. You know, like for us.
I'll come on as many times as
watching.
you'll have me. I've had so much fun up to this part. I will come on as much as you want.
I love that. Thank you, Chris. Okay. Yeah, well, just some nuggets too. I love, and this is like my, you know, being able to spend the time, like we've talked on the phone, but like sitting and having
we don't actually talk enough, unfortunately.
Yeah. And doing such similar work, right? Different threads to it in the space. But this idea for parents, so when you have been a huge vocal, like you've been a voice, you have been a really important voice in terms of what we're willing to accept and not accept for athletes, not just in swim, but the collective. So when a parent, coming back to that space too, of like a parent, you know, feeling the pressure of just stay as hands off and far away as possible, don't become overbearing. So like, how do we navigate that middle ground and know that our kid is actually in an okay space? And when and if and when do we say something if we sense something when it comes to the dynamic between for our kids? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, you got to have your own sense of, like, you as a parent, right? I think even maybe if my kids grow to swim someday, I'll probably have more context for the sport of swimming and the way that I think practice should be run or this, that, anything. But honestly, like, that's not really like the sporting details. I think that's where people sometimes get tied up, and that's not really where you should be as a parent. But like, I would always tell parents, like, you can judge basic behavior. You know, like, what is an appropriate way for somebody to to talk and carry themselves and be. That doesn't take any special sporting knowledge. I'll tell another story about my mom. Now, I love that you express that duality about your coach, because I don't want to like lionize my mom. I mean, my mom also hit me in the head with shoes. Like there were some bad moments, right, in between all of these wonderful moments. But she had I remember she had a really good moment where she stood up for me as well. When I first made it onto a senior swim team, so I made it up to the top level of my swim club, and I had 2 working parents, and I was late to practice a lot. Like, my parents couldn't figure out how to get me to that 5:15. My mom would be running late from work. My dad, forget about it. He
5:15 is a hard start time.
Yeah,
just for coaches to know. I struggle with that with my kid too.
He never drove me to anything. But so, like, I would be late sometimes. I remember this coach was giving me such a hard time about the fact that I was late, and like, punishing me essentially for the sin of being late to practice. And eventually he called a meeting with my mom and I to like hash out my poor behavior. And I remember she just said, like, you're going to stop giving him a hard time about being late, because that's not his fault. He's 14 years old. He doesn't drive himself here. That's me. So if you got a problem with it, you come talk to me about what's going on. And I'll never forget, because my coach at that time he was another person who really bullied me. He was chewing gum, and I remember that gum was just getting like chewed into oblivion. Like, he didn't know what to do.
How they handle that.
When my mom was just like, when somebody stood up to him, right? It was another one of these moments where somebody stood up, and then, everybody, it's like Mike Tyson, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the head. Like, verbally again, he got kind of punched in the head, and he was like, oh, what do I do now?
Yeah.
Right?
And I just see that when I see that from, working with coaches, it's like the control. It's like, I want this behavior to change, but I'm not quite sure how to change this behavior. Right. So
Yeah.
that's maybe for our part 2 podcast in terms of like, looking at
we
that.
can talk about that because I do most of my focus right now is actually coaching
With coaches.
Yeah. And I'm trying to get coaches to like think about, because I think that you voiced it beautifully. To talk about below the line. I think about it in terms of capacity, that every coach has a capacity to motivate people positively, to try and get people, like influence people to do the things that they believe will help them improve. And when you run out of patience,
Yeah.
you're a jerk.
Oh, that's Chris.
So,
we need to talk about because I don't think we've talked about the scale, like the nervous system, like when you talk about capacities. I'm moving my computer for those that are listening, so we can see the full scale. Same. That's because we're human at the end of the day,
Yeah.
So okay. So two questions left. One, permission slip, and then the second one is where can people find you? So if you were to grant permission slip for parents, just broadly in terms of something that we can take with us, permission to do or not do. In order to show up for our kids and have this experience be like that lens of appreciative joy and being able to be connected with our kids to help them develop as young people. What would you offer parents?
I would say, you have permission both to stand up for what you think is moral, what you think is ethical, and to be really steadfast about that part of it. I think also it's important. We didn't really get into this, but I mean, to the extent that you can empower your kids to have their own voice on that.
Yeah.
I mean, you are going to run into situations where simply, yes, maybe you will have to come over the top. But I think, as parents, we're part of our job is we're trying to work ourselves out of a job. Right?
Exactly.
And so I think that's an important part of it as well. And, don't let anyone tell you that you can't give input because you're not a coach, you're not an expert in the sport. You still know right from wrong, and you still have a basic sense of humanity and how people should be with each other. I think with the caveat that you also can take a deep breath and not necessarily like go on the offensive just because your kid is upset, right? We talked about that earlier with the heat-seeking. You don't need to be a heat-seeking missile.
That's so good. I think everyone listening can relate to that description in some way.
Yeah.
So pausing there and being able, I love that the language used too of just like stripping down the details of the sport. Like I literally knew nothing. I mean, I watched the Bruins growing up, but like I didn't know hockey, and I still don't really. I'm learning a lot to give myself a little bit of credit. But what you're talking about, that's where I find myself. It's like strip away the details. I don't need to know all that in terms of like being able to provide
what the lines and the
don't need to know
what icing
but you can get
is,
hooked there. So I think as parents too, it's also a place for us. Like, is that where we're getting hooked? Are we getting hooked in all the details and all of those things? And if that's the case, kind of allowing that to settle and then asking ourselves, like, what are we really actually upset about? Yeah. And maybe it's just the line. And if that's the case, then is that worthy of bringing to a coach? Or is it more so in terms of something that's like creating friction with values? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so much to think about. This is like the best gift. So where can people find you, learn more about your work, read your work, listen to your pod? Yeah. Take us home.
ChrisDcoach.com. I got an awesome URL, ChrisDcoach.com. Chris D as in DeSantis, my last name. D as in Dove, or I don't know, whatever. Yeah. ChrisDcoach.com. I have all my blogs are there. Podcasts are hosted there. I mean, you can listen to them in the browser window there. You can contact me there. There's a contact form to do that. Swim Brief is the name of the podcast. A little cheeky play on the little swimsuits that men wear to swim. The little Speedos. Has a double entendre, right? Debriefing stuff. Lots of interviews with coaches, and a lot of it, like for people who are listening to this, if you're not if you're not in the sport of swimming, you can listen to my podcast. Like we don't get into the nitty gritty of like freestyle technique and how many hundreds you should be doing in repetition. It's a lot about what we've been talking about here: psychology, the culture of sports, like how to coach, not what to do.
Yes, it's the how. That's exactly it.
It's a how podcast, right? So Swim Brief. You can find that on Spotify or Apple Podcast. I post clips on Instagram. So if you want to get a flavor of what the podcast looks like, Chris D_coach on Instagram. It's the place to find me.
Yeah.
You can DM
we'll link
me
it all
there,
too. Yeah. And I'll collab you and tag you and all the different things too.
I can't wait. I can't wait to be on the other side.
Oh my gosh. So fun. Oh, amazing, Chris. All right. We'll put a pin in it for here and we'll be back, I'm sure.
Thank you.